The stock market just hit the single highest number in its entire history. And you're broke. Not stocks are up a little broke, record broke. The same stretch the market printed an all-time high, a survey that has measured how Americans feel about money since the 1950s hit the most miserable reading it has ever recorded. Lower than 2008, lower than the pandemic. So one number says everything is amazing. Another number says people have never felt worse. And your bank account is voting with the second one. Here's what I need you to understand. That is not a glitch. It is not the market being irrational. Those two numbers aren't fighting each other. They are the same machine running exactly as designed. And by the end of this, you will see the machine. You won't be able to unsee it. Grab a snack. This one is about why your life feels like a recession while the headlines throw a party. Let's start with the lie hiding in plain sight. The phrase, the stock market. We talk about it like it is a thermometer for the whole country. Like a green arrow means you are doing well. It doesn't. It never did. The stock market measures one thing: the price investors will pay for a slice of about 500 big companies. That is it. It does not measure your rent. It does not measure your paycheck. It does not measure whether you can afford eggs. And lately, it barely even measures those 500 companies. Because here is the trick. When you hear the market hit a record, picture 7 companies. Just 7. Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, a few other giants you already know by name. Those 7 are now worth about a third of that entire 500 company index. So when the news says the market, they basically mean a handful of trillion-dollar tech companies in a trench coat. The other 493? A lot of them are having a perfectly mediocre year. In 2024, most of the stocks in the index actually did worse than the index itself. The everything is up feeling is really 7 things are up. A lot. And those giants have a second trick for shoving the number higher without doing anything new. It is called a buyback. A company takes its enormous pile of cash, and instead of paying workers more or dropping its prices, it buys its own stock. That shrinks the number of shares. Fewer shares, same profit, so each share is suddenly worth more. The price climbs. Nothing real changed. Last year, the biggest American companies spent over $1 trillion doing exactly that. $1 trillion to pump their own share price. Hold that number. We are coming back to where it didn't go. Okay, so the market is a few giant companies pumping their own stock. Fine, but why is it ripping higher right now while you feel poor? Part of it is a building boom. These same companies are pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into artificial intelligence, into data centers the size of towns. That spending is so massive it is propping up not just their stock prices, but the national economic numbers too. The party is real. It is just being thrown by about 7 guests. And here's the part that should make you sit up. The market isn't only climbing despite you feeling squeezed, it is partly climbing because you are getting squeezed. Same dollar. Let me show you. A company's stock goes up when its profit goes up. And there are 2 ways to grow a profit. You can sell more stuff, or you can just keep more of the money you already make by handing the people who actually do the work a smaller slice of it. Guess which one has been winning? Right now, the share of the American economy that goes to workers, to wages, is the smallest it has been since the government started measuring it back in 1947. The smallest in almost 80 years. And on the other side of that very same pie, corporate profits are sitting near the highest share of the economy since World War II. Sit with that. Workers' slice, record low. Company profit slice, near record high. Those are not 2 separate facts. They are the same pie cut differently. Every dollar that stopped going into a paycheck and started landing in profit is a dollar that pushes a stock price up. So when you feel like you are working harder for a smaller piece, you are not imagining it. You are getting a smaller piece. And the market is literally throwing confetti about the transfer. That green arrow is partly made of your missing raise. Now, who actually catches all the money the market is throwing off? Not you. Even if you own a little stock. Look at who owns this thing. The richest 10% of American households own about 90% of all the stock in the country. The top 1% alone own roughly half of it. And the bottom half of the entire country, they own about 1% of the stock market. 1. Now you might be thinking, hold on, I have a 401k, I am in the market too. And you are. More than half of Americans own some stock. But here is the catch nobody mentions. Owning some, and owning enough to matter, are completely different things. The typical retirement account in this country holds around $38,000. So when the market jumps 20%, the guy with $5 million in stock just made $1 million in his sleep. You, with your $38,000, made about $7,000 on paper that you cannot touch for 30 years. Same percentage, completely different life. The wealthy don't just own more of the market, they own basically all of the part that is big enough to change anything. And that is where the trick finishes. Because all the money the rich make from a rising market, they go out and spend a little of it. And their spending is now quietly holding up the whole economy. There is one stat that explains the entire country right now. According to Moody's, the richest 10% of households now do nearly half of all the consumer spending in America. Half. Up from about a third back in the 1990s. So when an economist goes on TV and says, the consumer is strong, the economy is fine, they are mostly describing rich people buying things. The data is technically true. It is just not about you. You can see the split in where people shop. The boss of one of the biggest dollar store chains admitted his core customers are running out of money before the end of the month. And at another chain, most of the new shoppers walking in are people who used to be comfortable, now hunting for the cheapest version of everything. Top floors it, everyone else coasts to a stop. And if all of that has you nodding along thinking, yeah, that is exactly how it feels, here is why it feels that way in cold numbers. Because you keep getting told inflation cooled, and you keep not feeling it. Here is the part they skip. A cooling inflation rate does not mean prices fell. It means prices are climbing slower, from a shelf that is already about 25% higher than it was back in 2020. That shelf does not come back down. Your groceries, your rent, your insurance, they all reset to a new, permanent, higher floor. And for most workers, the paycheck never quite caught up to it. So people are covering the gap with debt. Credit card balances just hit a record, and the share of people falling behind on those cards is the worst it has been in about 15 years. The number of folks behind on their car loans just hit a 32-year high. And if you handed the average American a surprise $400 bill tomorrow, almost 4 in 10 could not cover it with cash. That is the economy you actually live in. Not the green arrow, the car payment you are dodging. So zoom out and look at the full machine. The market goes up because profits go up. Profits go up partly because wages went down. The gains pour onto the 10% who own nearly all the stock. They spend just enough to keep the economy looking strong on paper. And you get to read the cheerful headline while you quietly put 2 things back at the register. And just so you know, it is not only regular people who smell something off. Even the most boring, serious money is twitchy. The price of gold smashed record after record, and the world's central banks have been hoarding it like the lights might go out. That is the grown-ups in the room hedging against the very party they are supposed to be hosting. Okay, deep breath. Because if I stop right here, you walk away thinking the whole thing is rigged, a crash is coming tomorrow, and you should bury your savings in the backyard. And that is the part most people get wrong. So let me give you the honest version. The one that should actually lower your blood pressure. A record-high market is not a warning that a crash is coming. I know it feels like it should be, but the market sets new all-time highs constantly. It has spent something like a third of the last 100 years sitting at or near a record. Buying in when the market is at an all-time high has, historically, worked out completely fine. New records are normal. That is just what a thing that grows is supposed to do. Now, is the market expensive right now? Yes. By one classic measure, it is the second most expensive it has ever been in 150 years, behind only the dot-com bubble in 1999. And history does rhyme. In the early 70s, everyone crowded into 50 can't-lose stocks right before they fell off a cliff. In 1929, a famous economist announced that stocks had reached a permanently high plateau about a week before the worst crash in history. The most dangerous words on Wall Street really are, "This time it's different." But expensive is not the same as about to crash. Expensive just means the next 10 or 20 years probably pay you less than the last 10 did. It is not a date on a calendar. Nobody can time it. And the people who sit in cash waiting for the crash usually lose more sitting there waiting than the crash would ever have cost them. So no, the lesson is not run away. The lesson is the thing this whole video has been circling. There is a line running through this economy. On one side, you own the things that go up. On the other side, you only pay the prices that go up. The record market, the squeezed wages, the rich pulling away, almost all of it is just describing which side of that line you happen to be standing on. The cruel part is that the line is invisible until somebody points at it. The kind part is that it is the one thing in this whole rigged-feeling machine that you can actually move. Not with a hot stock tip, not by predicting the crash, just by slowly, boringly dragging yourself over to the owning side, a little at a time, and then refusing to panic. That is the cheat the wealthy use. It is not a secret. It is patience, and a head start you can still hand yourself. So the next time a headline screams that the market hit a glorious new record, and you feel that little jolt of, then why am I broke? You can stop feeling crazy. Because now you know the number was never measuring your life. It was measuring theirs. At some point, the stock market and the economy you actually live in got a quiet divorce, and most of us did not get the house. The only real question left is whether you spend the next 10 years renting from the people who did, or start, slowly, buying your way onto the other side of that line. This is Broke on Purpose, where I show you exactly how people lose money so that you don't. If you would rather understand the game than keep getting played by it, hit subscribe. The next way the system quietly works against you, it will land in your feed before it lands in your wallet. See you then.